There's a mistake. Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
You like me. Right now. You like me.
Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted this.
Mom, I just want an Oscar.
I'm Connor Wold and welcome back to another episode of the Ultimate Oscar Showdown. And this week we are going to be looking at a brand new category, the final category, which will be tier ranking the Best Supporting Actress category. But if you're new to the series, what I've been doing every single week since the end of the Oscar season has been tier ranking different Oscar winners categories, looking at the winners from a certain decade and ranking them from S tier being the highest to D tier being the lowest. We've already completed the Best Picture tier rankings, the Best Actor, Lead Actress, and Supporting Actor, and now we're going to look at the final category, Best Supporting Actress. So we're going to look at this episode, the 2010s, then the 2000s winners, then the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, and tier rank those winners. Then when we're done in the 70s, we're going to go right into the Olds Oscar Countdown, into the 8th season of that show. That's the flagship series on this channel, so if you're a fan of that, subscribe to the channel, watch these last few videos before we get into the Oscar season. Lots of interesting stuff that we'll talk about. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We still got these videos to talk about in a good month and a bit of them, so still lots of stuff to be done. But without further ado, let's jump into this category, starting off with the 2010 winner, Melissa Leo, for The Fighter. And we see this, particularly within the 2000s and the 2010s, the sort of character actor start to get a little bit of appreciation and then get the rewards. We'll see J.K. Simmons on the supporting actor side, Allison, Janney, which will be coming up, sort of gets this respect where they've been a face and a name which you've seen in lots of stuff, and then finally they get a good sort of shriek and then get the respect. In this case, Melissa Leo with Frozen River, a good leading opportunity, and then with The Fighter here, and then Mildred Pierce the next year. And she had to actually really finance her own campaign for this Oscar, and then ultimately became successful. But because she had that sort of grassroots character actor, I think, kind of ability, that ultimately added to her charm. And Leo is solid in the film, playing the overbearing Boston mom. I think she absolutely nails the accent, and when you nail this sort of Boston accent, it lends a sense of believability that this woman has been in this area for her entire life, and I think Leo totally nails the accent. I'm not from the area, but it feels believable, it feels real, which I think is the most important part. But it's also a secretly underrated performance, because I think a lot of people think of it just as the screaming, bossing, sort of overprotecting mother, which it is, and she's good at that, and the insults and can be very fiery and passionate in that regard. But then there's also sort of quieter scenes with her apologizing to Mark Wahlberg, where we see she is not just this crazy villainous mother, that she can be sympathetic and does want ultimately the best for her kids and recognizes some of her mistakes. And Melissa's also able to showcase some of the more sentimental and gentle sides of her character there, while also being very excellent at the sort of yelling, screaming, insulting Boston mom from this area, sort of quick to anger character. So it's an iconic character in this film, and she's very good in it. So it will go in the B tier for me. Then the 2011 winner, Octavia Spencer, for The Help. Another sort of a character actor performance, but I think this was really Octavia Spencer's first big movie. And when we think about the movie, we think about, at least I do, her character. The most iconic scene being the sort of eat my shit cake scene, which is I think, the most memorable part of the film, and that's a testament to her performance, that she's a part of the most important part of the film. She works very well as a sort of counterbalance to Viola Davis's character, who's a little bit more shy and reserved. Spencer's character, Minnie, is much more over the top, but will speak her feelings, sort of the stereotypical sassy black older lady. But to the success of the film and to Spencer, I think she's very excellent at that. She brings a lot of the humor, which I still think holds up over 10 years, to the film. She's very funny. She has a very expressive face, which makes her very, I think, easy to sympathize for and root for, and more of the comedic relief within the film. Like I said, playing well off of Viola Davis's character. And I think the reason why the character is so memorable is because of the Spencer's comedic timing. This really is a true comedic performance, and she does have some emotional scenes which showcase her depth, but to me, when I think about it, it's just how funny she is and how enjoyable she is as a character and as a performer. And I think in many ways sort of helps define, even though she's still kind of a character actor, it's almost a borderline movie star persona. When we think of Octavia Spencer in the film, it is an extension, I think, of this performance. So lots of credit there. So for me, it will go into the B tier. Then the 2012 winner, Anne Hathaway for Les Misérables. And we've talked about on this show this idea of separating the performance from the film, but sometimes the film can do harm to your performance in how your performance is utilized. I think that's the case here with Hathaway. You can tell that Hathaway, I think, gave a very moving and true and intense performance within the film. But the way it's being used is very one note. She's only being asked to be painful and be a representation of pain and to cry a lot. She's more so a symbol rather than she is a character. Now, Hathaway is a critical part of this first half of the movie, which I think is the best half of the film. But the issue ultimately is that you can sort of see that there's probably some stuff on the cutting room floor, some depth to her character. We're being told that she is a mother, but we don't really get to see those sort of smaller, personal, behind-the-scenes moments. She's just asked to be in pain, fired from her job, on the streets, singing, tight close-ups, asked to be cried a lot. It's a torturous kind of performance, which I don't really blame Hathaway for. It's more so that it's just misused, and because it's only that mode, it's only cry, it's only pain, doesn't allow Hathaway to showcase a lot of depth. So it's an intense performance that requires her to do quite a lot, but there's no depth within the performance. It's really ultimately just kind of a one-note thing. And while that dimension it is moving, it's ultimately, I think, a little bit limiting. So for me, the performance will go into the C tier. Then the 2013 winner, Lupita Nyong'o for 12 Years a Slave. Not unlike Anne Hathaway, a very intense performance, which is also in many ways the representation of pain and anguish. Lupita has a similar emotional register with Anne Hathaway's character. And the difference being ultimately, I think, that McQueen knows how to use her a little bit better and gives her more scenes to shine and to showcase off her depth. So we do have these very intense scenes when she's asking for soap and playing to herself to Michael Fassbender's character, where she's very powerful and very moving. But then we also get other scenes with her and Alfred Woodard, or her and Shootology 4, trying to whisper and asking her to drown her. There's a real heartbreak to the performance, and Lupita knows that this is a painful performance and a painful kind of a film to watch as well, and she has to be the representation of that anguish, but she understands how different levels can actually add to the overall performance. She can have the level 10 yelling, very crying, emotional performances, but she can also show that heartbreak in another way, in these sort of whispering desperation kind of scenes, or in the heartbreaking other sort of quieter scenes where she doesn't have to say anything at all. We just sort of understand it through her eyes. So Lupita is excellent at doing that, to showing more different levels of that heartbreak, which add up together to understand and give us a fuller picture of what this experience really was like. So really a terrific performance that will go into the B tier. Then the 2014 winner, Patricia Arquette for Boyhood. Truthfully, one of my favorite performances of the decade. In part, probably she won the Oscar because of that one final scene at the end, which that scene alone probably could get her into the S tier. But I'd be remiss also to not mention the other elements as well. But speaking of that one scene, it really is her Oscar scene, but it's also one of the most powerful scenes in the film. I'm talking about the scene very near at the end of the film, when she sort of reminisces on her life and has this sort of reckoning when she sees her son, Mason, the boy in the Boyhood, go off to college. It's just an incredibly realized and human piece of acting, where she knows that she's not supposed to be feeling this feeling during this time. It's supposed to be a time of happiness. She's seeing her son off to college, but then she can't help to recognize her own life and realize that everything sort of just passed by her, and now the next big major milestone is her funeral. And it's a very unique scene, a very unique acting performance and approach to this style, which is what makes the movie so great, is that it's almost a very rarely observed emotion, that sort of emotion of knowing you're supposed to feel one thing and feeling something else, and being heartbroken because you're not feeling what you're supposed to be feeling, and that sort of impending sense of negativity that still sort of is able to creep into your mind. And Arquette executes that beautifully. You know, to be able to take an emotion that's not happy or sad or traditional emotions you showcase on a film, anger, what have you, to showcase that and to make it communicated to the audience and make that realistic and to make that understandable is a testament. And to be able to communicate that sort of complex emotion to the audience is really a tough task. I mean, I watch that clip maybe once a month. It is just so impactful. So for really that scene alone, she goes into the S tier for me, but I also want to talk about the other elements of her character. In particular, I think the unique element of maternal aspect that she brings to the character, where I think for a lot of people we think of maternal elements within movie characters, they're overbearing and there's a sense of worry or a sense of anxiety to that. But because the movie is told through the boy, Mason, his viewpoint, we see Patricia Arquette's character through his eyes and see her as a sort of rock, because she's a single mom, because she is the only sort of main parental figure living with them in their day-to-day life. She is seen more as calm, she's seen more as reserved, she's seen more even stoic at times, rather than just being crazy and moving all over the place. She feels like someone that can be there for them, that can be the rock for the children, the one that is the responsible one, even though maybe she's not. And we see other instances when, you know, she's many different relationship troubles and what have you. Because the movie's told through, I think, through his eyes, the Mason's eyes, it brings a sort of unique, relaxed calmness that's also still very maternal, which once again is another unique emotion that you don't see too often within film, but that Arquette, I think, really captures as well. The performance is just so human and a testament to the power of everyday people and regular old living. It's a remarkable performance, so for me, like I mentioned, it is going to go into the S tier. Then the 2015 winner, Alicia Vikander, for The Danish Girl, which is an Oscar I think no one's really angry about, but that's because she had such a great year that even if you like The Danish Girl, you're happy, but you know, if you're like myself, who really likes Ex Machina and thinks she probably should have won for that, well, at least she won an Oscar in general. It does feel like an Oscar role for an incredible year for Ex Machina, A Man from U.N.C.L.E., and of course here with The Danish Girl. And she is very good in the film. The movie I have some more complicated feelings with, but ultimately we judge the performance and not the film, and I do think she is probably my standout from the film. Interesting to see her in the sort of first bit of the movie be this very bright person. It's a very bright performance in that she's very free-spirited and has accentuated movements and has full of life, and there's a real passion that she brings with her chemistry with Eddie Redmayne in that first half of the film, and the way he sees her and the way she acts, and the way she sort of enjoys this sort of experiment that she has by putting her husband in these feminine clothes. But then as this sort of experiment becomes more permanent and he becomes maybe a little bit too infatuated with it on a personal level and discover something within himself, we see Vikander's character sort of grieve that in a way where she's supportive because she loves the man who's now transitioned into a woman, but she's also grieving her husband that she lost and the relationship that they had because she's not attracted to women. And it's fascinating to see an actor turn on the light bulb so brightly, but then the second half of the film smartly sort of dim that light bulb slowly and slowly until the second half she really is almost a broken part and a grieved woman. So a heartbreaking kind of performance in that regard, but also a testament to the technicality of what she brings as an actor to sort of subtly bring down that energy scene by scene. So by the end of it, it's very gradual and it's not overnight, which makes it almost even more heartbreaking. That was a slow, steady sort of pushing apart of what once was, and we know how powerful and bright that once was, that relationship once was, and the sacrifice that had to be made for Lily to transition within the film. So really great, energetic performance from Vikander that will go into the B tier. Then the 2016 winner, Viola Davis for Fences, which was really a co-lead performance of the film, like Alicia Vikander, ironically, in The Danish Girl. But all that means within this film, and within this video, excuse me, is that she has more chances to act and increase her chance of being in a higher tier rank, because I usually like the actors who are in a lot of the movie just because they give themselves a chance to showcase a lot of the depth within their character. And this is, I think, an iconic Viola Davis performance because, in a way, this is a great movie star performance. Because when we think of Viola Davis, I think of intensity and power, and this is an opportunity of her that she gets to do that. So much of the film and the success of the film is reliant on these performances to create this really intense, powerful scene really at the end where we sort of the iconic, I think, sort of snot crying mix, kind of a yelling, intense, passionate speech that really only Viola Davis can do. Now, it's not only just that. In the first half of the movie, she's funny and warm and charming, and she has sort of that old married couple believability back and forth. But ultimately, I think the success of the film and the power of the performance is just how she really moves you with these strong, intense emotions of, as she struggles with her husband's infidelity and sort of alcoholism, the power that she brings to that, and the perspective that her character has is so well communicated because of Viola's intensity and power and ultimately heartbreak that she brings to the film. So it's a really powerful, very moving performance. That sometimes can be a tough movie to watch, but undoubtedly a really great performance. So it will go into the A tier. Then the 2017 winner, Allison Janney for I, Tonya, which is a very fun performance. And like I talked about with Kevin Kline, sometimes the Oscars and the Academy just like to give out rewards to fun performances. We have Laurie Metcalf and Lady Bird, which is great and humanist and very studied, but they kind of went with Allison Janney because I think a lot of Academy members really liked Allison Janney. She's a character actress. She's been around for a while. She'd made a lot of friends. And this is a very funny performance and a very sort of over-the-top performance, but there's a genius in what Janney does in her decision to be sort of slightly over-the-top and everything. I mean, this is a woman who smokes with an oxygen tank and a fur coat and a parrot sitting on her shoulder. It's knowingly kind of crazy. But within the sort of can't believe this is a true storytelling that's happening, it works well. And Janney is great at doing that, at understanding that this has to be a crazier than true life story. Even though it is based on a true story, it has to be still over the top. I can't believe this is true, because that's the sort of tone of the film. So she always takes something a little bit over the top. She'll have these great scowls. She'll give these really brutal line deliveries, but she knows that her role within the film is to be sort of the antagonist, to be the sort of overbearing mother that helped create the Tonya Harding that led to the incident at the Olympics. So it's a performance because, in a way, it's an actress who knows her place within the film and executes on that. So while it was a little bit of a "We Like You, Miss Janney" Oscar, at the end of the day, I still think it's a very fun and solid performance that will go for me into the B tier. Then the 2018 winner is Regina King for If Beale Street Could Talk, which is still an underrated film, probably because it was released only a couple of years after Moonlight, with the surprise Best Picture win. But I think when we think of Barry Jenkins' career, this will be, well regarded. So I am glad that it still got an Oscar, because I remember at the time I was, I predicted ultimately Regina King, but at the time we were unsure if she would actually win, because I don't think she was nominated for SAG and didn't win at BAFTA, or she wasn't nominated at SAG or BAFTA. So yeah, it was very much a unsure kind of an Academy Award win, but one that I'm glad she won, because for me, I'm always fascinating and I almost really appreciate performances that are humanist and feel like kind of real people. Those are always the performances I like, versus just symbols of themes and using actors as tools. I like actors that are able to build up a character and feel like a real person, and that creates an almost additive part of the film. And I think Regina King is one of my sort of favorite humanist actors. She's so great at doing that in so many of her films. And in this one, what I think she captures so well is the worry of a mother. She's worried about her daughter's young relationship and what that means and whether or not she's picking the right guy and interacting with the other family. She's worried about her now incarcerated son-in-law, and she's not doing that out of a place of selfishness. She's doing it for others. She's not worried about herself. She's just doing it because she has enough empathy and passion and care for others, which feels very maternal. But then as a result, because the movie is essentially a very heartbreaking movie about trying to find justice and peace in an unpeaceful and unjustful world, she becomes that sort of representation of the heartbreak, because she wants these things. She just wants peace and can't get it, and that's the sort of ultimate heartbreak of the film. But we experience those films not only because of the sequences of the films, but because Regina King puts a face to that, because she is the mother, and we understand how hard it is for her to feel those feelings. Not only is it difficult for, Stephen James' character to be in jail, but for the in this case, Regina King, the mother-in-law, to see her daughter unhappy and see this once beautiful romance sort of split apart. And that's because of the humanist acting that King brings, just in these simple, close-ups where she's taking off the wig, and really powerful moments here where she doesn't need to say anything, and yet we feel so much. So for me, it's a terrifically great humanist performance, remarkable performance that will go into the S tier. Then Laura Dern in 2019 won for Marriage Story, which is, I think, definitely a sort of It's Time award. She's not the main appeal of the film. I think, looking back on it, when people appreciate the film, it's more Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson. But she is very good as the divorce lawyer. She has a couple of integral scenes with these long monologues where she, like her character, feels like she has this almost rehearsed speech that she's very good at. And Laura Dern as a character is able to convince us that she is this a convincing and very persuading lawyer, while also telling us at sort of corner of her eye that, well, this is kind of disingenuous and she's not doing this out of care or genuine empathy, but because she wants to win a case. So she has that ability to communicate to us why this person would be so persuading, but then also allude to the very messiness of this divorce and allude and foreshadow to what that eventually will be. But her ability to sort of feign relatability and prowl around the office and to make Scarlett Johansson's character feel more at home. It's a really clever bit of acting, and even when we get into the divorce proceedings and we see her be very mean and cutting, she is excellent at that and very believable as a divorce lawyer. So while it may have been an It's Time performance, I still think that this is a very solid and well-observed performance that will go into the B tier. So take a look at that. I think overall an excellent decade for this category. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because this was, the decade that I fell in love with the Oscars and the more modern movies. So of course they're going to appeal to my more modern sensibilities. But I really do think that all these performances are really solid at the very least, if not great, as I mentioned. So I'd love to hear your comments down below. This is a recent decade, so I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen a lot of these performances. If not, you should. A lot of them are quite good. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, your own personal tier rankings. I'd love to hear that. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss next week's video of the 2000s Best Supporting Actress rankings. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.